Which day is this? This is your 4th day, right?
Day 4 for me, yep.
So it's day 5 for the project. Let me get out of the wind a little bit more here. We're on to the next bluff, the next ridge. So we're continuing to move south along this edge. There's a lot of cedars here, which the cedars aren't on our management plan. We don't have to remove them to comply with our forestry plan here, but there's definitely some that we need to cut just to free up the oaks. We've been talking about that. So I think I'm going to work up through the cedars on this edge, and I think Carson's going to jump around and maybe go to the more the hardwood side over to the fence. The fence is on the other side of the fence is still mine, but that's where this project area ends. So if you go to the fence and then work the hardwood stuff, you know, from the bottom up, and then I'll work up through the cedars, and hopefully we'll meet somewhere towards the top. This one's going to be a little bit more work on the cedar side, but I think the hardwoods will be pretty open. If I'm not mistaken, I think there's just a lot of oak in there.
Yeah.
Which that limits the amount of cutting we need to do. So that's our plan for today. I have another discussion topic. I want to talk about the hack and squirt versus cutting the trees down, and you know why you might do one versus the other. My preference is to cut the trees down, and obviously you've picked that up if you've been watching this series. I'm all about getting the trees on the ground, and I'll talk about some of the trade-offs with the hack and squirt. We've done some of it on the previous farm that I owned, but not a ton. I think we're still in the wind.
A little bit.
That's a little bit better. So I've done some of the hack and squirt, not a ton. Most of what I've done is cutting the trees down. So we'll kick that around a little bit later on in the day too. We'll get this thing started, and then we'll take a break and talk about which one, you know, for each situation. So we're going to jump to the sponsors, and then we'll get to cutting down some of these trees. Dream Farm is brought to you by Whitetail Institute Food Plot Blends, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail App, Hoyt Archery, Wildlife Farming, and PH Outdoors. We got part way up in here, and we hit this spot where I was cutting the cedars down last year. Thought you might get a kick out of seeing what it looks like 1 year later. It's it's thick. There's no doubt about that. But I know there were some small oak trees in there when I cut it, and I opened up a bunch more, so I'm sure there's quite a few, you know, getting started. You can't see it now because everything's dormant, but I know in the spring there'll be stuff coming up through here. What this needs is fire. Good old Duke. I don't know what's wrong with Duke. He just doesn't like the work. But that's kind of stage 2 on all this TSI that I'm doing. Really, it's an important stage whether I'm doing TSI or not. So I've got to get more comfortable with burning. This country I think would be kind of hard to control because of the slopes. You know, you got to start the fires high and work them down, because if you start them low and you have low humidity, I mean, it's just gonna be flying through here. The flames would. It'll be interesting to see what they do when they hit all of these old dry cedar trees. I know they'll go up, you know, they'll burn. That'll clean up a fair amount of this, but like I said, I mean, I know there's stuff growing up through them, so even if I don't get rid of all of it, there's still going to be a lot of undergrowth here. It's just going to be hard for the deer to get through it, you know. So long term, I think I do need to clean this up, and the fire should do most of that. It's break time, so I'm going to talk real quick about the trade-offs between cutting a tree down or using the chemical treatment on the standing tree. Some people call it hack and squirt. I guess that's as good a term as any for it. Basically what you're doing is getting the chemicals into the outer layers of the tree, and that will go down into the root and kill the tree. So it dies standing. Right here is some kind of an elm. I know it's one that we're going to remove. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I think that looks like. I mean, I've done this on the other farm some, and you know, I haven't really had much, well, I shouldn't say that. I had some failures. Maybe just didn't get enough chemical in there. It was the wrong time of the year or whatever. So maybe the sap was pushing up instead of pulling down. You know, I just didn't get really clean kills all the time. But that's not the main reason why I don't use the hack and squirt method. I want the trees on the ground for a couple of reasons. And again, everything that I do here is the way that I like to do it. It's not necessarily the way that I'm telling you that you should. I'm just going to give you the trade-offs and tell you why I fall on one side or the other. And I fall on the side of dropping the tree and killing the stump. The reason I do that, twofold. One, maybe there's 3 points to it. One, I like the tree on the ground because the top then creates a little bit of a sanctuary for the second growth or the second generation growth coming off the forest floor. So you're looking at maybe you know, underbrush that's trying to get started, you know, small trees that are growing from acorns, whatever the case may be. If you have deer pressure, they're going through the woods and they're always browsing away at that new growth. So you don't get the chance really to get things established well before the deer are already eating it. And it's not so bad on this farm. We've talked about it a lot already, and why I do like a little bit lower density here, because you get a chance to create that habitat without the deer, you know, immediately eating it. But the farm I had in southern Iowa and a lot of other farms that I've been on, the population is just so high that if you don't do something to protect that regrowth, the deer are going to eat it right away. So I do like the top. You know, when this tree falls, there's a lot of branches up on top, and that's going to protect some of that regrowth. The other reason, another reason is I just don't want, I guess maybe there's only 2 reasons. I don't like a bunch of dead standing timber. It's a personal thing. If I'm sitting on a tree stand, I don't want to be looking over and seeing all these trees with frill marks around the bark that are standing there dead. It just annoys me. So again, that's just a personal thing. I'd rather see the deer or the tree on the ground, gone, dead, the stump decaying, you know, and get it more back to a natural look. So those are the 2 reasons. The upside for doing the hack and squirt is pretty obvious. I mean, you don't have to spend the time to drop a tree. But I mean, literally, this tree is going to take me 20 seconds to drop. It'll take me at least that long to do the hack and squirt. So again, how much time savings are you really getting out of it? I think with the really big trees, it's a different story, because then you've got the safety aspect and a little bit longer, you know, to drop that tree to the ground. But a tree this size, like I said, I mean, I could probably cut it down quicker than I can do the hack and squirt. So let me show you what I think that looks like real quick. Again, like I said, I'm no expert on it, but then I'll wrap it up after that. And I know that some people do that with a hatchet, which, you know, I can see where that's going to be quicker. They'll make a couple chops and then they'll just pour the chemical down the side of the hatchet right into the bark, or right through the bark. This, to me, that took longer, way longer than cutting it down. So if I was going to do it, I wouldn't use this method. I would do something with a hatchet. But this is what we used. This method is what we used on my farm down in southern Iowa that I said it didn't really succeed that well. And again, I think it was probably the time of the year and the sap was coming up. But now I'm going to show you the easy way to do this. So this is what I like. I didn't get my notch in the right spot there. I was being a little bit too cocky, but I just missed that hole just a tiny little bit. But you can see cutting it down, it's fast. I'll just treat that stump real quick. Done. Well, we're wrapping up day 5. Yeah, we got maybe, I'll bet you we got 2.5 acres is my guess. We had a little saw trouble. We had a part fall off one of the saws, so that took me out of commission for a little while. So we probably could have got a little bit more done, but we're still making progress. This was a tough spot though. It was really thick.
Yeah.
I mean, I had tons of cedar trees in the direction where I was cutting, and you had a little of everything down in that bottom, didn't you?
Yeah, it was really thick down there, more trees than I expected.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'll be really good for the habitat because like we've said, you know, the more you've got to cut, the thicker it's going to be, you know, when it grows back. But it's just a lot of work in the process. Owls are out. I think one more thing popped into my head when I was cutting. We were talking about dropping the trees versus the chemical kill and let stand. Another reason I like to drop them is you get the instant cover. Because if you look down the hill from here, we'll get a quick pan before we're done. It's really, really thick on the ground.
Yeah.
So you get the benefit of that, and over time, obviously that will decay and rot and fall apart, but in that process, you've got the other plants and the small trees coming up through it. So it does produce some instant cover when you drop the tree. The top does. So that's another, in my opinion, another thing in favor of dropping the trees. So we got, see, tomorrow, I don't know if I'm going to film tomorrow. I might just go for broke on cutting, and then we'll come back again in a couple of days and produce another episode of the Dream Farm. We got 3 or 4 trees to cut here real quick, and then we're gonna bail, head back to the buildings. So we appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you right back here again very soon for the next episode of Dream Farm. And remember to always dream
Big.